Hello everyone, welcome back to the Zekko Football channel. You are watching the recap, the show where we go through the major talking points from the most recent round of Premier League fixtures. We've got quite a lineup for you today, so grab yourself a drink, grab yourself a snack, sit yourself down, and we can dive right in. If you are new to the channel, please make sure that you subscribe, you like the video, and you turn on those notifications. It really helps me out and is very much appreciated. Without further ado, let's recap. We start in Manchester with Manchester City's 3-0 obliteration of Manchester United. If we have a look at the attacking momentum bar, you can see that Man City were in complete control for the most part of the game. They generally had a little bit less possession towards the start, and then in little spits and spurts, Manchester United managed to get the ball on the floor and started to play, but generally, Man City really imposed themselves. If we have a look at the players, I was extremely impressed with the way that Manchester City held their width, but at the same time were able to play through the middle of the park. Manchester United are showing exactly what they should not be doing. You want to be holding out wide areas to make sure that you're spreading that Manchester City back line. They failed to do that, and instead they encapsulated themselves within the middle of the pitch, allowing Manchester City to use those wide areas, like we mentioned in our preview, to be able to isolate different duels against Manchester United players. And if we have a look at the Man City team, I was so impressed. Gvardiol really did turn it on towards the latter stages of the game. Kyle Walker, again, part of that back four, but also making sure that he's able to be defensively solid against Marcus Rashford. And then Ruben Diaz keeping everything ticking. John Stones moving into the centre of midfield really kept Man City having the ball and making sure that was flowing through the game from the start to the end. And Bernardo Silva is a player that I really want to mention, because the way he drifted around the pitch, just making sure that City had a continuous imposing nature on the game, I thought was extremely impressive. As you can see, he was literally everywhere, making sure that City always had the ball, that the ball flowed, and then he picked up pockets of space out on the left-hand side and the right-hand side whenever City wanted to flow from one side to the other. It's this license and free roam that really did Manchester United in, and I don't think they had an answer for it. Erik ten Hag's answer at half-time was to take off Sofiane Amrabat, their one major defensive pivot, and go for a double pivot of Scott McTominay and Christian Eriksen. Now, once that happened, the floodgates opened and Erling Haaland got his second goal. Let's just talk about the first goal as well for a moment, because I think it was a little bit soft, but what Rasmus Højlund is doing in that particular instance is always going to get pulled up. My issue with the refereeing is the fact that fouls like that aren't being given. I think they should be if it's such a blatant and obvious foul, but really, it doesn't get given as anywhere near as often as it should, if that is the ground rule and the baseline for what a foul in the box should be. Moving forward, Manchester United were completely toothless. Marcus Rashford failed to have any kind of impotence on the game. Bruno Fernandes moved infield far too much, which made sure that they didn't have any width. Rasmus Højlund tried a couple of things, but he does not have the clinical edge of the likes of an Erling Haaland or a Julian Alvarez, and overall it became a very, very easy day for Manchester City. If we have a look at some of the stats, Man City completely dominated and absolutely deserved to win the game. They had an XG of 4 compared to Man United's 0.95. They had the more ball possession, they had 3 times as many shots, they had over 3 times as many shots on target, 10 and 21 respectively. Just nowhere near good enough Manchester United were. They had 1 big chance, they missed that. Man City had 7 big chances. The levels to this game were very apparent. And then we have a look at the most damning thing for me watching this game was the fact that Man City were on top. They had most of the ball, and yet they won most of their duels. They wanted it more. They were hungry. They needed to get back on top. And again, they imposed themselves on this extremely poor Manchester United side, who again lose a Manchester derby. And at one point, you do really have to wonder whether Manchester will always be blue. Chelsea. I don't think Brentford are given anywhere near the amount of credit that they should be given. They were absolutely fantastic in their 2-0 victory over Chelsea. Fun fact for everyone, Brentford have actually won more games at Stamford Bridge than Chelsea have since April. They've actually won their last 3 visits to Stamford Bridge, so clearly they're doing something right, and it's something that Thomas Frank and the entire Brentford team need to be given a whole lot of credit for. But let's just double back and have a talk about Chelsea, because they dominated the game, as you can see from the attacking momentum bar. They were completely in control, and yet they failed to really create and finish any chance that they had. Cole Palmer was extremely frustrated with Nicholas Jackson, who was not making anywhere near the amount of movements that are needed to really create some kind of space for the Chelsea attackers to go forwards. Madueke really fluffed his lines as well. Raheem Sterling wasn't good enough. Caicedo and Conor Gallagher are not necessarily the two most creative players, and they missed Enzo Fernandez due to family reasons, which means that the creative needed to come from somewhere else. Marc Correa really not having the impact that I think he would want. Disasi as a centre-back playing at right-back clearly didn't make any overlapping runs, clearly didn't make any chances, and really this Chelsea side was very, very stale. And although they had a lot of the ball, they couldn't really penetrate through this extremely good Brentford defence. If we have a look at the average positions, I was just extremely impressed with the lines that Brentford were creating, the back three, the back five, the ability to really transition into that front two. We've talked about Visse and Mbeumo. I thought that Mbeumo was brilliant again. If you haven't seen the video that I did on underrated players, and Mbeumo was one of those, please go check that out because he is absolutely sensational, getting his 6th goal for the season after that brilliant counter-attack. Pinnock getting on the score sheet as well. They're one of the best at crossing. For accurate crosses, they are, I believe, 3rd in out of all of the Premier League teams. They are just sensational, and they managed to win their duels. They were defensively solid, and Chelsea didn't have an answer. It was just something that I thought was just brilliant from Brentford. Again, both teams having 2 XG, but Brentford being able to convert their chances, and this is damning. This is horrendous. Chelsea had nearly 70% possession, 17 shots, only 2 on target. We're going to look at that again. 2 on target. Look at this. 2 shots on target. Brentford had double that. More than double that. It's embarrassing. Chelsea need to go back to the drawing board and try to get their strikers firing. It's incredible. I just can't really answer it. Brentford won more of their duels. They lost out on their aerial duels, but they wanted it a little bit more. Chelsea couldn't find a way through them. They couldn't find a way to break them down. And actually, as you can see in the table, Brentford leapfrog them and go above them. It was a fantastic performance from Brentford, but yet again, another lackluster addition from this Chelsea side. At what point are they going to be able to try and create and convert those chances? We need to stop talking about potential and XG and really start to look at the attacking options that Chelsea have at their disposal. Do they need to go into the market in January? Is the answer really to spend more money? Let me know. And now finally, let's talk about Wolverhampton Wanderers 2, Newcastle United 2. I thought Newcastle were quite fortunate to get away with a point, and that might seem quite controversial because of the XG that Newcastle had, but I thought Wolves created the better chances. I actually thought the Wolves were very unfortunate with the penalty, but we'll get into that in just a moment. I was very pleased and excited to see the way that this Wolves side would adapt to this Newcastle side, especially after watching Gary O'Neill's interview on Monday Night Football. I thought he did a very good job of explaining what it takes and what gets put into training sessions going into a game and how teams prepare. And what he ended up creating was a back three that transitioned into a back four whenever they needed it to, allowing Ryan Aït-Nouri to be able to go forwards as well as Nelson Semedo. Really gave Wolves some impotence out on both flanks, and it allowed Pedro Neto and Matheus Cunha to really drift in field. It meant that Pedro Neto was able to get a good pocket of space up against Dan Burn, who I thought should have been replaced for Lewis Hall, especially the moment that Dan Burn goes on to his yellow card. Lascelles, I thought, did an okay job, but Trippier and Burn were really targeted by Wolves, and I thought both Cunha and Neto did a very good job of really running those channels and making sure that they really worked Trippier and Burn. Overall, the goal for Newcastle, the first one, was a well-taken chance by Callum Wilson. I thought he did a very good job of really being at the right moment at the right time for that mistake from Jose Sarr, and it was a brilliant finish. But the penalty, we need to talk about the penalty, because for me, it just was never a penalty. How you've got the referee to be getting into that situation, I can understand the referee giving it, but I can't understand the VAR not recommending the referee go and look at it. It's not a penalty for me. I don't even think he touches it, and if he does, it's minimal. I'm sick of hearing about a clear and obvious error, because for me it was a clear and obvious error. It's not a penalty, but by the by, I just think that we need to be re-looking at the rules. We need to be re-advising and just going back and changing some of these stupid rules, because it's ruining this game. That is yet another VAR howler, in my opinion, that Wolves have had to deal with, and it's something that has seriously cost them some points. I think they could have won this game, and if it wasn't for the penalty and the shift in momentum from that, I think Wolves possibly could have gone on to win, and it's something that needs to change. Overall, I thought that Wolves arguably were the better side. XG might disagree with me, and some of the stats might disagree with me, but I thought the Wolves were the better side in a large portion of this game. They had more duels won, 74 to 43. Now, how often do you see a Newcastle side, like they are, getting outworked that badly? Not very often. Of course, with the midweek exploits against Dortmund will play a part, but generally I was so impressed with the Wolves, and I thought they deserved a little bit more out of the game. 28 tackles to 16. Again, Wolves really being dynamic, wanting it a little bit more, and I was so impressed with the goals that they had, especially the second one, Totti being able to drift infield and then play a through ball into Hwang Ki-chan, who with his left foot just slotted it home. A brilliant performance from Wolves, which, like I said, deserved a little bit more. Newcastle get away with a point, and it was very fortuitous for me. Newcastle were a bit off on that day, but Wolves were fantastic, and it made for a pretty brilliant game of football, and in the end, the spoils were shared. 2-2. And to wrap up, let's have a look at some of the scores from around the grounds. Tottenham beating Crystal Palace by 2-1. Heung-min Son getting on the score sheet again. An own goal helping out Tottenham in this game with their lack of attacking threat in certain instances. I thought they struggled to break Crystal Palace down. Palace did a good job defensively, and offensively, they're just really missing the likes of Elise and Eze. In the end, it was a better performance than they had against Newcastle, and Tottenham walk away winners. Bournemouth beating Burnley by 2-1. A very good performance from them. They needed to get a win on the board, and it means that yet again Burnley are losing, and it seems to be the promoted sides that are seriously struggling in this league, but we'll have a look at the table just a little bit later. Arsenal beating Sheffield United by 5-0. Yet again another promoted side seriously struggling. Sheffield United, what are they going to do? If we have a look at the attacking momentum bar here, they had nothing in this game. Eddie Nketiah getting a hat-trick was something really to behold, but Arsenal just had far too much for this poor Sheffield United side. West Ham losing to Everton by 1-0. Everton are starting to come back into this. I think that Everton might just be safe this season. They're really starting to pull out some wins. Dominic Calvert-Lewin really getting a huge goal for Everton, and they managed to hang on. West Ham lose yet again. And we have Aston Villa beating Luton by 3-1. All the promoted sides losing this weekend. Villa really coming out worthy winners, and Luton yet again failing to really impose themselves on this game. Brighton drawing 1-1 with Fulham. This is an interesting one. Brighton really dominating the game and then getting that goal, but Fulham really starting to bounce back. I was quite worried for Fulham, and I still am, especially with their lack of attacking threat, but they managed to claw out a point against Brighton, which is no mean feat whatsoever. And finally, we have Liverpool beating Nottingham Forest by 3-0. Obviously, the likes of Darwin Núñez, Diogo Jota really came into this game, and as you can see, the attacking momentum bar was all Liverpool up until the last little bit, but at that point it was 3-0, and Liverpool managed to sail away to that big victory. And in the end, those are your scores from around the grounds. And finally, let's take a look at the Premier League table. The bottom three is full of promoted sides. Luton, Sheffield and Burnley are really struggling to get out of this relegation zone. 9 losses out of 10 for Sheffield United, who are yet to get a win. If we move forward, we can see Everton in 15th after their victory over West Ham. Wolves climb into 12th on 12 points, the same amount of points as Chelsea after Chelsea lost to Brentford, who leapfrogged them into 10th. Manchester United stay on the same amount of points after losing to Manchester City. Newcastle and Brighton are both on 17 points, but there's a real top-sided nature happening with the Premier League this season. Because of the lack of quality and because of the amount that the promoted sides are really struggling, it means that so many more teams have a lot more points on the board so early on in the season. We've actually got 5 teams. The top 5 have 20 plus points all between them. Now, this is absolutely crazy, and it could lead to the most top-sided Premier League that we've had in the last decade. It's crazy. 22 points for Aston Villa, 24 points for Man City, and Tottenham leading the way with 26 points. But my question to you is, who is your side and how did they do this weekend? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, take care.